My name is Michelle. Last Christmas, I accidentally stored about 7 pounds of high-end holiday food as fat on my body, so this year, I'm dieting for the upcoming holiday. If I can lose 7 pounds now, I'll be okay even if I gain 7 pounds over Christmas. Huh, that's not how it works, you say. Yeah, no way. There's just too much good food from Christmas to New Year's. And then I end up buying myself some Valentine's chocolates a bit later. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm gonna gain weight again this year. Well, today, I'd like to share a certain winter memory of mine. I'd love for you to hear it. It was when I was 25 years old. I had been dating my boyfriend, Keith, for a few years, and we decided to get married. I introduced Keith to my parents. It was what you'd call meeting the parents before marriage. My parents liked Keith, and everything was supposed to go smoothly, but then a problem arose. My older sister, Sally, who's 2 years older, came home from work and was instantly captivated by Keith. It's strange, but as sisters, I could tell what Sally was feeling and thinking in that moment. Sally had fallen in love with Keith at first sight. I hoped it was just my imagination, but when Keith offered a handshake, my sister blushed as she took his hand. When she talked to him, she always looked up at him with those doe eyes. I thought it was inappropriate for her to act like that with her sister's boyfriend, but she was probably doing it unconsciously. You can't control someone's feelings, and I thought, she won't take it seriously, she'll put a stop to it eventually, and chose to ignore it. However, after Keith left, my sister caught me in my embarrassing post-shower towel and said, "You should call off the wedding." When I asked why, she said things like, "That man is a player, you deserve someone better," and only negative things about Keith. But she had no evidence for any of it. When I asked why she thought he was a player, she said, "It's my woman's intuition." My sister had never had a boyfriend. How could I believe the intuition of someone with no experience with the opposite sex? Instead, I chose to trust what I had seen of Keith's character over the years. Naturally, I brushed off her advice with a non-committal "I'll be careful," not taking her seriously. After that, Keith started visiting my parents' house more often. He wanted to get closer to my family, so I invited him over more frequently. My parents were happy about it, and I was glad to see my future husband getting along with my parents. We were building a good relationship, but my sister was trying to build a good relationship with Keith in a different way. Keith told me that when I wasn't around, my sister would grab his arm, press her chest against him, and ask, "Don't you think Michelle is a bit childish?" She asked for his contact information, and even pretended to trip over nothing to expose her underwear in an accident. Keith laughed it off, saying it was so obvious it was funny. But if he had taken it seriously, I would have been worried sick. However, my sister seemed to think that Keith wasn't strongly rejecting her out of respect for me, so she took it as a sign he was interested, and kept making moves on him with a sugary sweet voice every time they met. Originally, it started with love at first sight, but the fact that Keith worked for a fairly large company also hit the mark for her. He was reliable, good-looking, and a secure future with him seemed guaranteed, so she wouldn't back down. Even though my parents saw her shameless behavior, they said nothing. Then again, it wasn't the first time my parents hadn't said anything to her. Honestly, my sister has always been the type you can't do anything. If I asked her to heat up some side dishes, for some reason she would put a non-microwave safe plastic plate in the microwave and melt it into a gooey mess. And, of course, she was terrible at studying too. She was bad at sports as well, especially swimming classes, which she would skip by making excuses like I hurt my leg, I'm not feeling well, or I have a skin rash. She couldn't study, do sports, or handle household chores. To be honest, she wasn't particularly good looking either. But our parents doted on her just because she was the eldest daughter and ordered me to support her from behind the scenes. From behind the scenes, they said, "Don't stand out, make your sister look good." It's terrible, considering we're sisters. Well, maybe to our parents, my sister seemed endearing because she was the poor thing who couldn't do anything. Strangely, I was oddly good at everything, kind of a jack of all trades. If I learned something, I would pick it up quickly. To adults, I must have seemed like a child with no charm who wasn't worth teaching. So even the mission to make my sister look good was something I accomplished easily, and there was a time when I pretended to be a kid who couldn't do anything outside the house. Around adolescence, I thought, if I keep doing this, I'll fail my exams, and started rebelling against my parents, doing whatever I wanted. If I had continued to listen to my parents, I might have truly become a kid who couldn't do anything. Well, because of this rebellion, my sister began to dislike me a bit, saying, "You stopped supporting me," but we were never on bad terms. We had normal conversations, and I even gave her advice sometimes. Though there was a slight bit of distortion, with my parents doting on my sister and her hostility towards me, I think we were still a normal family. However, this balance was disrupted because Keith never showed any interest in my sister.
How dare you, the younger sister, get married first? It's unacceptable.
The night before my wedding, my sister said to our parents,
"No, it's okay. Sally will get married soon too."
That's right, Sally.
That's not the point. Normally, the older sister gets married first, and then the younger sister follows, right? She's not ready yet.
Even so, the wedding is tomorrow, you know.
What, Mom, aren't you on my side? From now on, I'll be the pitiful older sister whose younger sister got married first.
That's not true.
I quietly listened in the hallway to the drama unfolding in the living room. Don't get married before your sister. If I waited for my loveless sister to get married, I'd be old and gray in no time. Honestly, what is my sister even talking about? Well, I thought she would calm down after venting, but
Fine. Tomorrow, both Dad and I will skip the wedding, so please forgive us. Right, Sally?
what? I couldn't believe my ears. Mom, too, went along with Dad, saying, "Let's do that," and pleaded for my sister's forgiveness. What is this? Are they my sister's disciples or something? Their devotion was almost cult-like. At this point, it wasn't just doting anymore. But my sister sighed and said, "Well, I guess I have no choice. I'll tolerate it as long as it's an unapproved wedding by the family." She pouted. She really didn't want Keith and me to get married. Well, it's probably because she's in love with Keith, but it's unbelievable. Because of my sister's unrequited love, my parents were going to miss my wedding. And so, the day of the wedding arrived. Despite it being a sunny day, I hadn't slept much and was completely sleep-deprived. Of course, it wasn't because I was too excited about the wedding to sleep. I had spent the whole night feeling nauseous, thinking about a conversation between my sister and parents. I'll never forget the way my sister smirked when my parents officially informed me of their intention to be absent. At the venue, I told Keith and my in-laws about my parents' absence. "I'm sorry, my sister opposed this marriage, so my family won't be attending. There's no more miserable news to deliver." In-laws must find it hard to believe that parents would not attend their own daughter's wedding. Upon hearing my report, my in-laws fell silent for a while. On such a sunny day, the heavy atmosphere was unbearable. Just when I thought this is the worst, Emily took my hand. Oscar quickly placed his hand over Emily's.
"If it's about your family, they're right here. Did you forget? Please don't make today a sad day. Come on, smile."
Emily and Oscar smiled gently, and their warmth brought tears to my eyes. "Hey, Michelle, you still have your husband, so don't say such sad things like the family is absent," Keith said, gently patting my head. As I started crying, my in-laws and Keith, despite their laughter, were flustered, saying, "Bride, don't cry, don't cry. Hey, your makeup." In the midst of this, Emily looked straight into my face and said,
"Michelle, it might be hard with your parents, but this will surely be a good new beginning. From now on, build your own family."
Emily hugged me tightly, comforting me as I felt abandoned by my parents. Keith and Oscar joined in. "It'll be okay. Just as Emily said, this will be a good new beginning. I'll build my own happy family," I vowed, and that day I safely married Keith. 15 years later, we had one daughter and 2 sons. Our responsible and capable daughter naturally took care of our 2 mischievous sons who were always causing havoc around the house, which was a big help. Still, when she yelled, "Cut it out already," it was just like me. Oh boy, I'm in trouble. Keith's job was going well, we bought a house, and life was peaceful. Then, troublemakers showed up to spoil everything. It was none other than my father, mother, and sister. Since the wedding, I had been estranged from my family and hadn't told them our new address. But somehow, they found out and showed up at our house. Of course, the first words out of my mouth weren't a warm "it's been a while," but a cold "what are you doing here?" "Sally has a favor to ask," my sister said. Even my parents pleaded and said, "We can only ask you." What's going on? What could they possibly ask of someone who left home 15 years ago? As I stood there, torn between wanting to hear and not wanting to hear, my mother broke the silence.
Give Keith to your sister.
What? Keith, who had come to the entrance to see what was going on, was just as dumbfounded as I was. Wait a minute, I don't get it. Why am I being told to give Keith to my sister? In a stern tone, I asked, and my parents looked embarrassed. Only my sister remained smug and arrogant.
Your sister is still single. She'll be 42 this year.
So what? My father's words only confused me more. Keith seemed just as puzzled.
Actually, your sister's company went bankrupt recently, and she's now unemployed.
That's too bad.
I think you can understand our concern about the future of your single, jobless sister. You must feel the same way since you're her sister.
I silently stared at my parents, thinking, no, not at all, but I kept quiet. I was more curious about what they were going to say next, and my father's words were frustratingly slow. I didn't interrupt because I wanted him to get to the point quickly.
Apparently, your sister has always loved Keith and is still single because of him. You've enjoyed married life with Keith, right? Please, give Keith to your sister for the rest of her life.
What? I looked at Keith, thinking, what the heck are these people? Keith seemed so shocked that it was like his soul had left his body. Ignoring us, my parents got on their knees and begged, while my sister remained smug. From her attitude, it was clear she was confident she would get Keith. Well, I guess she got used to getting everything she wanted from our parents, but this was too much. As I held my head in frustration, Keith pulled me closer. It seemed his soul had returned.
Hey, isn't this a chance?
Do you mean that?
Yeah, because this is exactly what Michelle joked about when she was drunk, and now it's actually happening.
Shall we do it? We quickly separated and turned back to face my sister and parents. Sally, do you really like Keith that much? Surprised, my sister replied, what? Yes, I've always loved him. Really, I love him so much. Wow, that's quite a strong feeling. You've loved him for 15 years, even after he became someone else's husband.
Yes, it was always painful, just thinking about you and Keith being together. It hurt so much because I believed we were meant to be.
My sister's confident tone made me almost gasp, but Keith and I managed to keep a serious face. I give up. If you feel that strongly about him, I'll step aside. It was my parents' turn to look shocked. My mother immediately exclaimed, "Are you sure? But didn't you love Keith too?" No, actually, Keith also.
I've always loved you, Sally.
Keith said right after I spoke, without missing a beat. My sister's face turned bright red instantly.
Really, I knew it. You never pulled away when I linked arms with you, and the way you looked at me was always full of love. It was a long wait, but finally, we'll be together.
I almost burst out laughing but held it in. Keith, even though you're pretending to be teary-eyed while looking down, I can see your shoulders shaking. Hang in there.
From now on, we'll live together, Keith.
Suddenly, my sister stopped calling him Keith with an affectionate suffix and started calling him just Keith, as if it was the most natural thing. Over these 15 years, she must have imagined a very intense romantic relationship with Keith in her mind. "I'm happy, Sally. Please support me from now on," Keith smiled.
Of course.
Then I'll quit my job.
What?
The blush on my sister's cheeks vanished instantly, and her eyes went wide.
I don't want to waste a single second away from you. I'll quit my job and stay by your side forever.
What?
I won't go outside. If possible, I'd like you to come with me even to the bathroom. When you're doing housework, I'll be right behind you, watching all the time.
My sister was frozen in shock at Keith's cheerful words, then suddenly started to panic. My parents were also flustered.
I'm not working either, and that's kind of a problem.
A problem? Why? As long as we're together, we have nothing to fear. Even without money, we'll be happy, right?
Well, but in modern America, we have insurance costs and stuff. It's not like the old days.
So you're saying you can't love me without money?
No, that's not what I mean.
My sister's eyes were clearly darting around. Then, Keith, when we get divorced, make sure to pay a hefty alimony, okay? I said immediately. Don't worry, your sister and parents will pay, Keith smiled. My parents turned pale and exchanged glances.
Sally, taking your sister's husband isn't right.
That's right, Sally. No matter what, this is too much.
Where had their desperation gone? My parents showed an astonishingly swift change of heart.
Wait, weren't you the ones who said Sally will definitely get Keith?
Well, Sally, that was different.
Shut up, shut up, shut up. Whose side are you on?
My sister went half mad, thrashing around, while my mother tried to calm her down, getting her hair pulled in the process. My father desperately tried to intervene. Is this a scene from hell? We watched this spectacle for a while. It was Keith who changed the flow by saying, excuse me, before I could. My sister and parents all turned to look at Keith.
To be honest, Sally, you're not my type at all. I was just being polite because you're Michelle's sister. But women who flirt are a complete turn-off for me. That's it. That's exactly it. A complete turn-off. Thinking I like you just because I was polite. I can handle women who are that delusional.
Keith's blunt honesty left my sister and parents speechless.
What? Then what was that just now, Keith?
Could you not address someone else's husband so familiarly? There's no way Keith would ever like you. We're happy together and have kids. I said this while stepping in front of my sister, who was approaching my husband with a pale face. What the hell? You tricked me, my sister shouted. How could you not realize you were being tricked? Why would a man who hasn't contacted you in 15 years be in love with you? Are you living in a fantasy world? My words made my sister's face turn bright red and her eyes fill with tears. She was crying out of frustration. Even if you were a desirable woman, no one would want an unemployed, delusional woman living off her parents. Besides, you've been having mom do all the housework at home, so you probably still can't do any household chores, right? At your age, with that skill set, you'd get dumped even if you did get married. As I delivered these harsh truths, Keith was laughing behind me. It seemed I hit the nail on the head, and my sister couldn't stop crying, sobbing loudly. My parents tried to comfort her, but with faces that said, "She's right." So, that's how it is. I'm not giving Keith up.
That's right. So give it up, Sally.
At our words, my sister began to bawl like a child. It's embarrassing as an adult. She really hasn't grown at all. Let this be a lesson. Don't ever contact us again. We'll cut all ties with you from now on. Even if Sally is unemployed and in trouble in the future, we won't help. Keep that in mind, I said, closing the front door. When the kids asked what happened, I told them, it seems a bad demon came. My eldest son said, "Let's throw them away." And although I stopped him, we could still hear the sound of the demon. No, my sister crying outside. 5 years have passed since then. As expected, my sister is still single. She managed to get a job, but I heard she relentlessly pursued young men and married men at her workplace, and eventually got fired. In her desperation to get married, she kept showing up everywhere and causing trouble, and now she's even banned from matchmaking parties. I think she'll be single for life. No doubt about it. My parents, despite being retired, are working multiple part-time jobs to save money for my sister. They probably realized that they can't rely on her for their future care. Well, they did dote on her that much. I hope they work hard and fully realize that it's all because of her. As for me, thanks to my well-behaved children and my hard-working husband, I never have to worry about tuition or going out to work, and I spend my days relaxed as a homemaker. Although, sometimes I wonder if going to work might have offset the overeating during holidays. My teenage daughter, who is already quite slim, insists on dieting, and I'm desperately trying to stop her. I tell her, "You can talk about dieting when you're as wide as your mom." My 2 sons have taken up dancing as a hobby and recently performed on stage at a local event. They've won a few awards and are adamant about joining a famous dance group, Exile, in the future. So I say, Exile members, please keep the group going until my sons grow up. Thank you. My in-laws visit us regularly, and we often share meals together. Even though I call them my in-laws here, I honestly think of them as my real parents. They've suggested we go to a luxury inn together once the kids are on spring break. I hope they stay healthy and live long, sharing many more days with us. Although there were many issues before the wedding, ever since getting married, every day has been filled with happiness. I truly feel like I've finally found my real family,